what I've seen a lot of right-wing media really try to pursue when it comes to sports. Someone brought up the point, that like there's always kind of in that tie. Rush Limbaugh was a sportscaster, Reagan. But what I noticed specifically is kind of like, for example, I know Glenn Beck or Clay Travis with Outkick and getting Rush Limbaugh's spot, but also Glenn Beck, he hired Jason Whitlock. And it seems he has his own show. And it really seems like there's this kind of concerted effort to, I guess, really go after an anti-woke sports audience and kind of use that to channel, I guess, the culture war. And I guess just from like a Canadian context, I know when Don Cherry, for the people who don't know, he was this hockey commentator.
Yes.
He was coach of the Bruins.
Right.
Yeah.
Go on.
Oh, no, yeah. Sorry, no, I was just going to say, I know you know and by the way.
If you guys have watched a little bit of hockey, you'll know him just for his suits alone, but he's pretty big piece of shit, yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Very xenophobic things. Wanted us to join in the Iraq War in 2003. And when he got fired, it was because he said this kind of xenophobic comment. When he got fired, which was right after our last prime minister election in late 2019, around October 2019, I swear, and I know this is getting kind of anecdotal, but not only was there more online conversation about Don Cherry getting fired and kind of, level of cancel culture discourse and all that, it's just walking around. I heard much more spirited debates in like coffee shops I would study at, bars, people, family members, and it was just a super divisive issue. So I guess it's just getting, like your opinion on, do you think that when they hire the Jason Whitlocks and Outkick, do you think that's going to be like effective methods for the right wing to kind of like mobilize their base? Because from my end, it seems to be like a very effective way for them to kind of, just add power to their side of the culture wars.
Well, it fits incredibly well into a culture war framework, right? I mean, it allows for a mobilizing of probably mostly men who watch, who are emotionally attached to this sport or these kinds of commentators, this framework for which they consume media that involves passion and nationalism and local pride. So all of those things are mixed into it. And I mean, just thinking about hockey, I think that's a very different thing. But in the U.S., it's super racialized as well because there are black hockey players, but it's mostly a white sport as of now. In the U.S., there's like a ton of white sports fans who are active racists who see black players as commodities, and the commentary that leans more towards favoring ownership, favoring management over players' rights is a perfect parallel track.
It's a proxy, yeah.
for white supremacy and racism on a political level.
Yeah, I mean, the problem that the right has is that actually talking about the policy priorities is not good propaganda. You can't just say, like, hey, we should cut taxes because bosses are actually really cool and we all love them. That's not a good way to, like, get your message heard. What's a lot better is in culture to participate in these cultural topics where you can say, like, Colin Kaepernick should stand for the anthem, or Allen Iverson should, like, wear shorter shorts and practice harder or something like that. Because all these things, it's like the what's that guy who said, like, we used to say the N-word, and now we say, like, forced busing and things like that. I forget. Atwater. Lee Atwater. It's the exact same thing because like I said, like, the core of right-wing propaganda is about obscuring the fact that they're for the bosses and for compulsion of labor. And so you need to go one remove, and you'll see other, I think, well, I guess it is sports, really. Like, I'm trying to think of other cultural avenues through which
It's such a massive cultural avenue too,
Right?
And also, just to add another wrinkle to bring Jason Whitlock back into the conversation, we also had that caller call in to talk about Candace Owens and how, as leftists, we shouldn't be talking about her appeal as narrowly tailored to just white conservatives, and bringing more conservatively inclined or looking, people of color who are looking for this kind of not agency, but I guess empowerment is a better way to say it, and who are looking towards conservative voices who are Black. And Whitlock is a good example of one of those like new influencer types coming up, who basically kind of divide and blame a younger or more progressive generation for their individual behavior, as opposed to having a power critique. And there are a lot of people in sports commentary in the U.S. who aid and abet that narrative. And so I think there really is a symbiotic relationship that you've touched on, Matt, you touched on it too, that I think we're kind of zeroing in on. That is indicative in how politics and culture are so intertwined.
Yeah, I mean, culture as basically a distraction from policy. I mean, I'm just looking at Ben Shapiro's YouTube page and just going to list off some highlights here. And there's others, but 2 days ago, Cleveland Indians go woke and change their name. 2 days ago, U.S. women's soccer team loses badly after kneeling for BLM. 4 days ago, Sports Illustrated puts transgender woman biological man in parentheses on cover, right? Like, this is just because you can't say like the stuff where you're defending concentration camps at the border, like, well, that's Joe Biden now, so you don't want to defend him, even though your policy, you still feel the same way about those people. Like, you got to talk about something to monetize for your audience, and culture is, and that's why I and like David Griscom and I make it a point to say, like, every time we're talking about these culture issues, we're not talking about really like who's being served, and it's not working people.
Yeah, and I'll dip right after this, but I agree with everything you said. And I remember that call too about the I think it was the 18-year-old queer black girl that you mentioned called in. She brought up some great points. Perhaps I'll call in another time, because as an Asian dude, as a half like Filipino guy, there's I definitely know what she's talking about. But just so I don't take up any more of your time, I do want to say, on the flip end, I actually, maybe in the minority in the majority report audience here, I love it when you, Emma and Matt, talk about sports, especially how you're able to intersect it, like how when you tie to issues like race and the NCAA to broader left issues. I think that when leftists engage in those type of things, it really helps build that broad appeal. I see that as someone who's been in hockey my entire life. And, and I think that's really, really effective. I love it when you guys talk about that. I find it really interesting. Wazmi Lombre is another guy who's really good at that intersection. And I just wanted to give you both of you props for that. I think your purely sports analysis is good too, except for maybe some of your takes on Carey Price. I'm a Montreal Canadiens fan. I just had to say that.
But Warren, I like you so much. I don't want to take my Carey Price takes back, unfortunately, but I overrated.
That's another debate.
See, this is the culture war, guys. We got to stay away from the culture war. We get distracted from policy.
You know what the Carey Price war is, though? It's like American hockey fans versus, like, I just don't appreciate how Canadian media is all on his jock. That's all I want to say about it. That's really it. Okay. That's what it is.
I did write a very recently for a sports publication. I wrote a very pro Carey Price piece. So you're talking to the Carey Price fan over there.
Oh, no, Warren. All right, man. Thank you so much for calling in. And Yeah, I think it's a good way to get into some of those cultural spaces where leftists are excluded.
Well, it's why it's important. I mean, we look at Sam always tells the story of Matt Binder and Gamergate, right?
Yeah.
And it's the exact same reason. It's because these are propaganda channels. And that's what the left needs to think a lot about that, actually. And that's why I think Woz is so great, because the guy that calls himself a commie and he's on the Ringer now with Bill Simmons. So it's absolutely great.
Right. Yeah. All right, Warren. Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot, guys.
See ya.
Yeah, have a great one. Bye.
You too. Bye. All right.
I'm so envious of Woz.
What a great gig. I mean, he was doing. I tuned into a little of his Game 6 analysis. It was really good.
Folks, there's more of what you've just saw where that came from. That's if you hit the subscribe and like button. Thank you. Really, thank you.